So, what do you think keeps so many military spouse entrepreneurs from growing in their business?
So interestingly, recently, there's two things that come to mind, right? There's what I think is the more obvious thing that most of us go to, any of us who get stuck in like business or anything, and it's we usually know where we're stuck, right? We need better marketing, we need work around our sales, something like that. Usually we have an idea around where we're stuck. And so I actually got to read some articles around the statistics on that piece recently.
Love
And
it.
some of the biggest things were actually marketing and mentorship came up, which as a
Mm,
coach, and I was like, hey, I can help
right,
you with that, right? This is what I do.
right.
Um, Coaches can be great mentors because usually we're coaching
Hmm.
people from the place that we came from, which is,
Right,
true in
exactly.
my case as well. So marketing and mentorship were really, really high on where military spouse entrepreneurs are getting stuck in business growth right now. But then even more recently, what's been coming out is the inner work that like
Mm,
just the fear that's under the surface there, that usually we can get to a certain point with it there. Like we can get past it to some degree. But then at some point, it's like it's too big and it keeps us stuck because things get too scary, or we just stop. And so what if we've been finding,
or we're not seeing the results that we want to see. And then we're like, okay, that's not working. Pivot, do something else. Right.
so that, yeah, that happens a lot. But that
Mm,
goes back to a few things. One, just being uncertain because maybe you don't have the mentorship and you don't know what it's supposed to look like. But then for some of us,
hmm.
even if we do know what it's supposed to look like, we do. It's a fear factor, right? It,
Right.
I actually noticed for me that is something that I used to do big time, and I've had to get coaching around is I've created 1,000 things. And I
Hmm.
create them and I'm super proud of them. And then when I go to put it out, it's kind of slow at the beginning for most. So usually let's don't get like a flood of people coming to us early on. It trickles, it takes time. You have to tweak, you have to test, you have to give it the time out there and then change, little tiny pieces until you get it to where you want it to be. And you really do start to get that influx of people who are
Hmm.
interested. But most of us don't get to that point. I was realizing I didn't get to that point because I'd put it out and I'm like, I was brave. I put it out. And then maybe I talk about it for a little while. I'm like, look at me being brave. I'm doing the thing. I'm talking about it. But that was as far as I would let it get until I moved on to the next thing. Some people call that shiny object syndrome. I'm realizing that's fear playing with me. It's getting
Right.
in my way of sticking with the thing because there's like kind of like a little bit of shame, like, oh, it wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. There's some
Right.
imposter syndrome, like, oh, I thought it
Mhm.
was good. It's
Yeah.
really not. And, I'm not as good as I
It
think I
messes with your Yeah, it messes with your confidence. Yeah,
am.
because you're
Absolutely.
like, I think this is so great. Why aren't people like gobbling this up right now? And maybe it's just not, you haven't, probably the truth is it hasn't been seen enough. And
Right.
that's the real answer. But in our minds, because we're analyzing the interaction or the engagement of the thing, we're
Mhm.
like, okay, well, they hate it, it's horrible. I don't know what
Right.
I'm doing,
We
and then
judge
it's
ourselves
like,
on other
okay,
people's behalf, right? I judged
yeah,
myself for you. You don't have to do it. I've already done it.
yeah,
Like
right. And then
you
we're
let
like, oh,
fear
back
lead.
to the drawing board. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're creatives, right? Most entrepreneurs really are to some degree creatives. There's always going to be another idea that comes up to pursue. Um,
Hmm.
but that's not the answer when it comes to growth. So what's happening is
Right.
so many female entrepreneurs, specifically, I've been looking at the military spouse community, but so many entrepreneurs are starting to go, oh, I definitely have some inner stuff there that's going on. Like there's some personal, and that's how what I've been saying for years now, and just hoping it was going to catch on. Personal development is business development. At
Hmm.
some point, if you haven't done the inner work, the personal development work, the self-improvement stuff, it's going to start to reflect and stop you in your business and in all areas of life.
Correct.
But yeah, and I that
That's
actually brings up a
100%
thought where I
true.
hear people talk about like talk down on the personal development, and we don't need as much personal development as people say we
Mm,
need, and everybody's got a perspective on it. But the fact of the matter is, it's not about fixing what's broke. It's about calling into your reality what you want for you, and you have a right to do that.
mm,
And I'm
mm.
broken,
Yeah,
but if you're not where you want to be, there's nothing wrong with seeing where you need to make some shifts to go after it and loving on yourself in the process. So
I think that, they say, well, maybe you don't need a coach, right? Like maybe you don't need a coach. But if you look at even any of our high performing athletes, they still have coaches.
yeah.
They still have somebody that is pulling them through to the next level. And so having someone there who's been there,
Mhm.
who can actually like walk beside you and help you to maybe see the things that you aren't able to see because you're so close to them,
Yeah.
then I think can really benefit you in general in life. And if you are better in your life, then you're able to perform better in your business. And I can attest to that because the last 3 years have just been a roller coaster for me, and my business has shown that as like a byproduct. So having someone stand beside you and walk with you is really um, the way for you to grow and
Yeah, I mean, we
push
all
you in
have blind
ways.
spots, right? No matter how much work we
Hmm.
do,
Hmm.
how good you get at self-coaching, we all have blind spots. And so if we
Right.
have somebody that can help us to illuminate that blind spot, and then,
Right.
we can start to overcome it. But sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And
Right.
something has to
Yeah.
change. That brings up, you just were talking about high performance athletes and coaches though, and that brought up something that I heard recently that lit me up. It was a good friend of mine's son plays on the our high school varsity soccer team. I was wanting to say football like I'm British or something. It's soccer.
Mhm.
So he plays
Football.
he plays on the school's varsity soccer team. And so, of course, they have their coach, they have their team coach, right? Recently, they hired a mindset coach for the team.
Mm,
And I was like, I had to know. I'm like,
so
how did it
excited.
go? What was the response? They loved having, I mean, the kids, the soccer players, and the coach, like the team coach, loved having this mindset coach come in and work with these kids on their confidence building skills and to show them, where you're
Yeah.
beating yourself up. That is, you don't even see the improvement you've made from this part, and having that, brought to light for them, and so they got to see themselves as players in a whole different way, and it shifted their performance.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is
It can
what,
definitely help.
yes. Yes. I mean, if you like think you don't want to coach and you're like, coach is not for me, fine. I don't,
Mhm.
I'm not the kind of coach who's going to tell you you need me to succeed. I think you want to do the
Mhm.
thing, rock on, do it. But if you know that you're stuck and you know that you'd want support, like that is what we're here for.
Well, I think that you don't actually need a coach. You can still get to that same end point, but
Mhm.
it's just going to take you so much longer. And, because you're going to have to deal with those things slowly as they
Yeah.
start to develop and start to come out and
Mhm.
appear. But if you have a coach, then it kind of accelerates that process for you. Like I've said many times, like my first coach when I started, one of the first things she said to me was like, "You have a mindset issue." Now, this was 10 years ago. People didn't readily talk about mindset. I
Mhm.
had no idea what that even meant. But what I slowly started to realize was that I did have an issue and I needed to work through it in order to be confident enough to put myself out there. So when people say that marketing is a problem for business owners in general, even military spouse, entrepreneurs, things of that, I could see why it would be a problem because you have to put yourself out there in order to market. And if you're not comfortable with doing that, then that's going to be a stumbling block for you for sure.
100%. That was a huge fear that I had early on. And, even when in my Etsy shops was a little different, you didn't have to see Heather. You saw my products. I was selling
Right.
products, not services. Um, There, and not that, folks who sell products don't need coaches, but my mindset was a little different. But then when I had to start putting my face on camera, on pictures,
Mm,
and I was the face of, the service that I provide, it was terrifying. There's so much fear running crazy. And had I not been in a program where, as I was learning to become a coach, I was being coached constantly on all of these things that
right.
were coming up. Um, I wouldn't be here doing this today where I'm showing up on a regular basis on camera because
Right.
and it
I
feels good
think
now. There's no
that,
hesitation.
right. I think that, there's a difference between products and services, right? And
Yes.
consulting, and meaning that you tie a lot of yourself to a service and or consulting because the results are based on what you did, right? And so, or what the advice you provided or something, or the service that you created for that person. And so there's a lot of connection to you, like you, I know when I've mentored and coached and consulted, I always put so much of that on my back. Like, oh my gosh, they need to, if they don't come out and just kick butt, then it's going to be on me. It's my
Yeah.
fault that they didn't do well. And that's not true, right? It's really based on what they do with the information that I provide. But I think that oftentimes we create this correlation between ourselves and our clients that if they're not performing, it's on us. And
Yeah.
so I think that that's the difference between, putting the product out there and putting the service out there because you're tied so much more closely to the services than the products.
Yeah, I think that's true. I will also say though that regardless of whether you're putting out products or services, there are fears that are going to come up. And if you tie
Mm-hmm.
your identity to what you do and what you provide, whether it's a service or a product, and it doesn't go the way you anticipated or hope for in the beginning, that can be a major blow to how you feel about
Right.
yourself and, not
Mm-hmm.
how you feel about yourself and what you're producing. So,
Right.
yeah, there's
Yeah.
either way, there's hurdles.
Obviously, you're going to be like, if your client just takes off and they, do so well, it's going to boost your confidence. And so,
Yeah.
alternatively, it's going to affect your confidence negatively if they're not really getting the results that you had hoped for them. But that's not on you to own. So,
Yeah, agreed. We could dive in there, but I think I think that
okay.
that's just, that could be another topic, but yeah, coaches do have a level of responsibility to show up as our absolute best selves, to do our own inner work, to, get centered and grounded before we go into a session so that we're not bringing our own stuff as much as is humanly
Hmm.
possible to leave our stuff at the door when we go into a session with a client. But at the end of the day, when we give the client everything that we have to give as a coach, the client has to take it and use it or not. And there's no way you can force another
Right.
person to do anything. So show up 100% as the best coach you can be. Yes, we are absolutely obligated to do that. Beyond that, the client has to take responsibility for what they're going to do with that coaching and
Hmm.
that information. And that's where we have to go. It is yours now.
Right. And so with that coaching, then you're able to grow in your business the way that you want to, because I think that it does help you get there a lot faster.